Gloria Strode, and welcome to Straightforward. Today we are visiting with our great attorney friend, Shevon S. Thomas and Associates. Welcome.
Thank you, Ms. Gloria. How are you?
I am well. You have so much good news. This is your first time visiting and us visiting with you at Straightforward. But since over the last couple years, your son, Shevon II,
Yes, ma'am.
has become an attorney.
Yes, ma'am.
And now your youngest son has been accepted into law school.
Yes, ma'am. That's right.
So that's a very proud thing for Miss Carol.
It is for most of us, but you're absolutely correct.
Always mothers have to get credit because
in
a sidebar before we started, you said my mother is at the highest point in this office.
That is correct.
So your mother. So we have to give honor where honor is due first.
Absolutely.
So we are going to be thankful that you had a mother that had wisdom.
Yes,
we
ma'am.
talked about that.
Absolutely.
And then we're going to give Miss Carol her credit for her wisdom with trying to manage all those men to keep everybody on track and keep all the balls in the air. So certainly we always want to make sure we honor the mothers because they really make a difference.
They do. I can truly say having someone, like you say, you call her Miss Carol. I call her Miss Carol also.
Know who's in charge.
Having someone that has the same interest in raising a home, raising a family, and even in my business, that's an asset.
That's absolutely.
I really do appreciate her.
Right, and that's what we have to train our young people. Selecting the right life's partner really makes a difference in terms of getting to your visions and your goals.
Absolutely.
And someone that's going to support you
Absolutely.
on that journey. Okay, so this is not where you started. Law is not where you started. We want to thank you for your service. How did that come about? You were infantry.
I was in the infantry. I spent 20 years in the military.
Really?
I spent 20 years in the infantry as an enlisted. I completed my undergrad and my graduate studies while I was in active duty. Thank God for the month.
Did you really?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so you were full-time soldiering and going to school too.
And at this point, I go right back to Miss Carol because Miss Carol was running a household.
I know, because I was a spouse of a military officer.
Absolutely.
And people don't understand, that takes a lot. When you're infantry and you all are moving around for the different trainings and, different war zones, somebody has to hold it together until it gets back.
Well, I think the journey or the footsteps, the footprints that we have left behind, because my sons were able to see both she and I working and going to school, and Miss Carol holding down the household.
Wow. And Miss Carol is a paralegal.
She has a master's degree, and she's also a certified paralegal.
Right. I saw all of her credentials on the wall, too. But I knew she had a master's degree, but I didn't know until today that she was a paralegal.
Yes,
so
ma'am.
She decided to get in to help with what her husband and sons were doing in terms of law.
We have to go back a generation because her dad
is a judge.
He's a retired, one of the Supreme Court judges in Jamaica.
Okay, so she came from a very rich legacy
of
law, of learning to love the law, doing the right things.
Her oldest sister is an attorney in New York.
Really?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so did you all start this journey in Jamaica, or you ran into each other once you got here? How did all that happen?
That's a very good question. Carol and I, we got married when we were young.
Okay.
And we didn't know where.
In Jamaica or here?
We met in Jamaica. We were high school sweethearts.
Okay, so so she knew you from a boy before you were a man.
Actually, her dad was a judge.
Okay.
So you can imagine me trying, because it's a very strict household for both
Absolutely.
of us. And we both, I went to a boarding school, an all boys school, and she went to all girls school there, St. Franciscan Sisters.
Okay. So Catholic?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, Roman Catholic. Okay.
And so I used to sneak and try to call her, I knew her dad was the judge, which was a scary thing for me.
Right.
But we maintained our relationship. When I migrated from Jamaica, I was 16, 17, came to New York, I joined the military, and 5 years later we got married.
Okay.
So we didn't know what, I guess, our place in
Mhm.
our own lives were.
Mhm.
Because right after we got married, we had our first child, Shevon.
And that's typical young military families. They
Absolutely.
start pretty young. They do.
Yes.
Mhm.
So, over time, she and I basically grew up together, if that makes any sense.
Absolutely. Yes.
And the military was there to kind of keep our structure.
Exactly.
And
Right.
I think if I were to put the main ingredient in it, I think where we came from, we have never forgotten that.
Right. You had good, solid roots.
Absolutely.
Good family foundation.
Absolutely.
Right. And so you all were able to bring that with you into the military life and survive the military life. And I use the word survive because a lot of our friends,
Yes, ma'am.
some were in our wedding right there at Fort Benning in the Infantry Chapel. I think we're probably one of the few 40 years later that's still together because the military life is not easy.
Right.
People think that it is, but it really isn't.
I take my, I take my hat off to her just about every day because, sometimes we're deployed, your husband will tell you it's 30 days. And
oh, yes.
I think the most trying time was doing the Gulf War because at the time she had 2 young kids.
Oh, and boys.
And we were stationed in Germany. She didn't speak the language. She was away from home. We got to Germany, I think, in 1989. And I was deployed in 91, 2 years later, and she was still trying to learn the German culture. So when I left, she had absolutely no clue, but she
no support system in a foreign country.
Correct.
Other than the other military wives, because we just kind of make a family,
Absolutely.
In terms of supporting and helping each other. But to go from Jamaica, a military spouse, to Germany, a foreign country, 2 small kids, that's a brave thing to do.
Yeah, she's a brave girl.
I mean, really, and still, right now today, she's still moving this ship in the right direction.
She's not the boss of me.
She is the boss, and so are the grandchildren. Well, what we're going to do, we're going to go to our sponsors, to our break, and we'll be right back. We'll be right back after word from some of our sponsors. Straightforward is brought to you by State Senator Ed Harbison, serving the citizens of Georgia's 15th Senatorial District and on the front lines for veterans every day. Progressive Funeral Home, family owned and operated since 1952. The George Ford legacy of high standards continues today in the compassionate and professional services provided. A touch of dignity for those who care. Progressive Funeral Home, 4235 St. Mary's Road, trusted by generations. The Columbus Memory Center, 7196 North Lake Drive, Suite A, Columbus. Dr. Jonathan Liss is a board-certified neurologist and sleep specialist committed to battling Alzheimer's by preserving independence, offering you the opportunity to get your memory number for free, the only vital sign for brain health. Call today at 706-327-4000 or visit columbusmemorycenter.com. And welcome back to Straightforward. I'm continuing this great conversation with Attorney Shevon Thomas. Well, the military served you well, 20 years.
Yes, ma'am.
And then you came to Fort Benning.
I was actually stationed. Yeah, I was very fortunate. I don't know if I should say blessed or fortunate or both, maybe a combination, because all of my stateside assignment while I was in the military have been Fort Benning.
Really?
I've never been stationed anywhere stateside but Fort Benning.
Oh, okay. But then you were infantry, so that makes sense.
It does.
And then you went in, you were doing law school in addition to being in the infantry?
Actually, I was.
Really?
Again, I was fortunate. My last overseas assignment was in South Korea, Camp Casey. And fortunately, again, I left here, went to Camp Casey, left my family here. And I was very fortunate after my tour ended in Korea, I was sent back to Fort Benning.
Wow.
So this is a story. You're going to like this. I'm looking at retiring now.
Right.
So I asked Miss Carol if she could get me one of those recliner chairs with
with
the
the
remote control.
Right.
She said, "Oh no. You're too young to retire. You need to figure out what you're going to do because you're not staying up in my house retired."
Exactly. You got to get another plan.
And so the next thing I knew, she brought home an LSAT book.
Okay. So that's the test we take to get in the law
She didn't
school.
tell me to take it. Yeah, this is the test to take. She didn't tell me to take it, but she just brought it up and set it on the table.
Right.
And when she
That
does
was a subliminal message.
it was.
Right.
So I took the book, I read through it, and I said, you know what, I'm just going to appease her. I thought I was
Right.
ready to appease her.
Right.
I did the LSAT. I told her I was going to take it one time, and I was going to apply to one law school.
Right.
And at the time, I was still on active duty. John Marshall was the only school that offered classes at night.
Right.
So I would work all day in the military.
Ooh.
And I was fortunate to have a great chain of command that supported me. I got off that let me off at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. To get in my car, and then I would beat feet to Atlanta to get there by 6.
Wow. So that was determination. But then we have to remember that Miss Carol's father.
Yes, ma'am.
It was very well respected judicial person in Jamaica.
Yes, ma'am.
Right. So she had high expectations.
I thought the book was for her because there was no one in my background, in my side of the family. That
Your siblings, none of yours, right.
So I thought the book was hers. I was just being nosy when I picked it up. But,
right.
It kind of worked out. By the time I retired from the military, I had completed a 1-year law school.
Really?
And I guess the rest is history. I got out the military, retired, and I went ahead and I completed law school. And she and I decided, Fort Benning at the time, because again, this is probably the only place, the only state, the only city I know. So
you all were very familiar, felt like home, away from home, because we know you're from Jamaica. But you felt comfortable, this is a good place to raise your children.
All 3 of my sons were born at Fort Benning.
Oh, wow.
3. So we consider Columbus, Georgia.
This is your adopted home, and it's certainly theirs.
Absolutely.
Yeah, they're certainly there. So then you went and you started this practice, just you.
Absolutely. I missed one step.
Okay.
After I completed law school and I passed the bar, my first job was as a prosecutor in Noonan.
Really?
Yes,
so you commuted?
I was commuting, and we had a young son at the time.
Right.
I'm glad you asked the question. And I started reminiscing about being in the military and, being away.
Right.
So, leaving here,
always gone. You got to do something different.
And I said, you know what? I think I stayed there for about a year and change.
Yeah.
And
I got to go home. I got to raise my kids.
Right.
Because in the military, you were gone. You missed a lot of things.
Well, my kids were raised. Miss Carol did a very good job.
But
I think I just wanted to help.
Yeah, but when dad is away and mom's holding it down in the military life, we got birthdays, holidays, big events at school. I mean, even at the daycare.
Absolutely.
And so that's what happens in the military. I mean, I know that.
And again, working in Noonan,
right.
I kind of felt the same being away from home.
Because you had to leave early in the morning, coming back late in the evening. And so, if there was a program at school, you couldn't pop out at lunchtime, check that out and come back. So from there, we went to Thomas and Associates.
Yes, ma'am. We went, we just decided that I'm going to leave that job, and Carol and I started here, which it was her and I.
Right.
And that's 18 years ago.
Right. And then all of a sudden, our Shevon II.
Yes, ma'am.
He passes the bar.
Yes, ma'am.
And our wonderful friend, with Bobby Peters.
Yes, ma'am.
Oh yeah, we love Judge Bobby Peters, has a great story just by himself. And so you were able to connect with that.
I'll go a step back. Miss Vivian Bishop. You actually worked, and Shevon was, after he got out of college, he actually worked as a deputy clerk
in municipal court.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so he got his feet wet with being
he was
in
able
the court.
to see the
court system,
the court system,
and how it worked.
Absolutely.
From the inside.
And it was good for me because I didn't want to, push something on him. I wanted him to make that decision for himself. And so, working there gave him an insight. And he took the LSAT, applied to law school, and
got in.
Yes,
right.
ma'am.
Isn't that something?
Yes, ma'am.
So mom, Shevon II, dad, and then now the younger brother is getting ready to make his final decision from his different offers.
Yes, ma'am.
To go into law school.
Yes, ma'am.
All right, then. So you're probably going to have to buy a whole block down here in the Uptown District when he's done.
Miss Carol has to buy a whole block.
So everybody can have an office. Yeah, but I mean, it's a wonderful legacy. I know that you specialize in criminal law, family law, juvenile law, and what else?
We do most of the criminal law, but we take on domestic cases, family law, and juvenile cases. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and so that in itself, and we've seen you with some tough cases on the news.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. And I tell people, I'm like, call Shevon, he'll help figure it out. And I think, too, having that military background and the discipline.
Right.
Of course, I know a lot of young people that don't have that background, but they go into careers and not have as much wisdom. Let me just say that. It takes time. So you've seen a lot of things as you move through life before you came here. And so that way you understand when people coming through the door with all of their issues, you don't have this pie in the sky. I'm not hating on that, but a lot of times we come fresh out of college, we bright-eyed, we bushy-tailed, and we really don't have a clue about life. But having that 20-something years in the military, and then being able to transfer all of the things that you've learned from being in all of your different assignments.
You're absolutely
and
correct.
Translate it into this role. I think that gives you a bird's eye view.
It was a little difficult. I think Colonel Strode would probably tell you the transition, we speak a different language, especially as infantry guys.
Oh, I know.
And so there was a moment of transition.
Right.
I tell you a joke. When I was in law school, and someone showed up late, it was a culture shock for me.
Yes.
You actually show up
late because you were trained to be where you're supposed to be and be there on time.
Exactly.
For 19
years of my adult life.
Right.
I started at SAT. And then they had excuses.
No excuse. I know.
This was a culture shock for me, but the transition, I think I did a fairly decent job in transition from...
Well, I think it has made a difference in what you do in your profession. Well, what we're going to do is take our final break, go to our sponsors, and we'll be right back. We'll be right back after word from some of our sponsors. Apple Tax Services for the best in tax preparation. 7413 Whitesville Road, Columbus. Call for your appointment today at 706-243-2590 or 706-243-2595. And remember, an apple a day keeps the audits away. The law offices of Shevon S. Thomas and Associates, 201 9th Street in Uptown Columbus, 706-350-7232. A veteran-owned law firm dedicated to equal rights and justice for all. Make Shevon S. Thomas and Associates your first choice for legal services. Visit ShevonThomas.com. The Miley Agency, 4903 Armour Road. Gerald L. Miley and William Ripsinger have been providing comprehensive reviews and insuring families in Georgia and Alabama for more than 50 years. The Miley Agency will work non-stop to find you the best policy at the best price. You can rest assured that your information is secure, confidential, and protected. Call today at 706-996-2045. And welcome back to Straightforward. I'm continuing this great conversation with Attorney Shevon S. Thomas. Thomas and Associates, what a legacy. We have Shevon the second. Now we have, what's your youngest son's name?
DeAndre.
DeAndre is starting his adventure in law school. The great thing about it is he's lived it.
Yes, ma'am.
He's been in and out of this law firm. Probably even when he didn't want to be here, especially as a teenager. And your parents work and run a business, you don't have a lot of flexibility sometimes.
There's something you said just now. I'm not going to cry.
Yeah.
But I rarely ever speak about it.
Mm-hmm.
And you said the word Thomas.
Yes.
And I think this is probably a good spot for me to talk about my dad.
Okay.
I don't talk about my dad.
Well, you always talk about your mother.
I do.
But she's at the highest point in this office.
I do.
Yes.
My father and we had a strained relationship, but he's the only father that I have.
Exactly.
And I've taught my sons that.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sitting here looking you straight in the eye because if there's one thing I can truly remember as a kid is my dad telling me to straighten up and look somebody straight in the eye. So
exactly.
I just wanted to take time that I did get my name from a man that I truly respect. He's passed now about 2 years ago.
Right.
My father, we call him the great Talbot Thomas, but that's my dad. And
right. And
my
was
son,
he in Jamaica?
well, no, actually, he retired from New York, worked all his life.
Okay, so he was in the States.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Both my parents had migrated. They worked all their lives in New York, and they were both retired in Miami. They're both deceased now. Passed. My dad passed in 2020. But I kissed and made up, if I may, with my father.
Well, and sometimes with boys, it's a struggle with the wheels.
Right.
And then at least we get to a point of peace and understanding.
Absolutely.
Because when we're young, we think we know everything. And a lot of times, even with our parents, they have had struggles and trials and tribulations that we might not even understand.
Yes, ma'am.
So for him to go from Jamaica to New York, to even give you that opportunity, your mama, and that's why I believe in honor and legacy. I don't care what anybody says. My dad had a high school diploma. Our mother died young. He raised 4 girls. He never got remarried. And he said what he said. He don't care who didn't like it.
Yes.
He would stand on the front porch in East Winton and say it. And people like, woo. Even my husband, when he first met my dad, he was like, whose daddy say all that? I said, a man that's raising 4 girls. Because he wanted to be clear that we were clear. Now, I didn't always agree with what he said, but we learn as we mature and get wisdom to honor.
Absolutely.
Whatever that role is.
My father he's, I guess, old school Jamaican, where when he spoke, the room had to be quiet.
Right.
And he's going to say it one time.
Exactly.
He was like the alpha male. And
yes.
I didn't want to be like that. I mean, I'm my father's child, don't get me wrong.
I understand.
But
you were a little more modern in your views, and
right.
he was more traditional.
Right.
But that's okay.
Right.
Because they had to do what they needed or thought that was the right thing to do
at
that time.
Absolutely.
And we see that even with our children.
Absolutely.
We're always Monday morning quarterbacking. If I woulda, shoulda, coulda. But at the time, as with us, our parents did the best they could.
Absolutely.
At that time. And guess what? You have Thomas and Associates. Your son, you have those 3 granddaughters who's going to always have all your money. You'll never have any.
They are not the boss
they
of
are
me.
The boss of you.
I got
You can see the one on Facebook. I mean, she is like running things. And you was like, but you're not the boss of me, but you're just constantly doing what granddaddy is going to do. And that's wonderful. That's what we live for. That's what we work hard for.
You said something just now that to me is very important, because that is kind of like the motto of my life, where my sons are doing their thing.
Yes.
But it actually doesn't stop there. See, I want to leave my sons something to leave.
A legacy.
Their
children.
Yeah, so those 3 girls that you're talking about.
Absolutely.
They're watching this.
Absolutely.
And it's very important for me, even when they choose
a
their
mate.
Life partner.
Yeah. They're going to have some standards.
From a foundation.
Absolutely.
So,
as did Miss Carol.
Yes, ma'am.
They will do the same thing. And that's why it's important. Our children have to see different to know different. Right. So what they have grown up with is their grandfather is an attorney. Now Shevon II is an attorney. Miss Carol is a well-educated person. She's a paralegal in addition to all of her other degrees on the wall. So your granddaughters will see good role models.
Right.
They will understand their sense of self.
Right.
And sometimes our children are not afforded that opportunity because they're born into different circumstances.
Right.
Right. So before we run out of time, what is the legacy you want to leave, and what's the words of wisdom that you have that you'd like to share?
It took me a while to get to where I'm at now.
It didn't happen overnight.
It didn't. It took me, when I say get to where I'm at, what I'm about to say, I want to be remembered as a good father.
Yes.
It's very important.
Yes.
That my granddaughters know that I'm a great grandpa.
Yes.
And I want to be a good husband to Miss Carol.
Right. For all of her sacrifice.
Absolutely.
Because whenever you take and you decide to support your spouse, and in the military now we have active duty females that their spouses are not active duty military.
Right.
When someone is willing to support you in your life's dream and they put their dreams on hold, you owe them honor and respect to do the right thing, try to leave the right legacy for the family, And I can speak to that for myself because I drug around behind him, you know, not just military, but even corporate. And so wherever that took us, then I had to get in and play my part.
Absolutely.
So I appreciate you for honoring in our conversation, even before, in a sidebar, before we started today, you pointed out your mother. She's at the highest point.
Highest point in my office.
Miss Carol takes the next step.
No, she's all over the office.
She's all
That's
over the office, but if it wasn't for mother, it wouldn't be a Shevon.
That's my mom.
That's right.
And that's my inspiration, my father.
Right.
So that's why I keep him
all suited up. I see him over there, all suited up.
He's a gangster.
Right, but no, he was ready. Then
that's all they dressed at that
exactly.
time. You know,
and that was in good taste.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely.
But then even for Miss Carol, your children and your grandchildren,
right.
It's not always about us.
Absolutely.
It's a bigger picture.
See, Jamaica is it was one of the colonies of England.
Yes.
And so my father, he was educated in England, so that look right there's the guess the Englishman.
Exactly, and polished.
Yes.
And polished.
Yeah.
Well, I want to thank you so much for taking this time today to just visit, share the inside story about Shevon S. Thomas and Associates, and the next time we'll be doing this with Shevon II.
Absolutely.
All right.
Always a pleasure.
All right. Thank you so much.
No problem.
This has been Straightforward. If you don't stand for something, you will fall for anything. Until next time, be blessed.
What up, world? What's up, Columbus? Be sure to tune in every Sunday, Straightforward with Gloria Strode, right here on NBC 38.